about barbers and how back in the day, barbers were surgeons, which means you went to the barber to get your hair cut, but you also went to the barber if you had some sort of awful problem with your finger and you had to get your finger cut off, or you needed to get a arm that was broken set, or something like that. So we're going to talk about 3 questions from this article. The first one is number 1, as it happens. So if you read that one, it says, in Europe, the first surgeons were something. And so what I always want you to do with these questions is change them into for real questions with like a question mark at the end, right? So this would be something like, what were the first surgeons in Europe? Okay? Now, although the article is about how barbers were surgeons in the past, you want to make sure that the article says that the first surgeons in Europe were barbers before you pick A, because A might be a trick. It is a trick. So, go to those lines. I would start reading at the beginning of the paragraph right here. Barbers learned to become surgeons from the monks they assisted in surgical operations. In Europe in the 1100s, the Catholic Church was in charge of caring for people's bodies as well as their souls. Catholic monks practiced surgery and medicine. So it sounds like the first surgeons were actually the monks, and the barbers were their helpers. Now, we'll read the next sentence in a minute to find out what happened to change things, but for now, you can just go up to question number 1 and pick B because you know that's the answer. It wasn't musicians, it doesn't even mention musicians, and popes. Popes are mentioned in the paragraph, but a pope is not a monk. So let's move on. We're going to move to question number 4 next, okay? Question number 4. Right here. So this is a vocabulary in context question, which means you have to figure out what a word means in a sentence from the paragraph, okay? So to do this, you go to the paragraph and you read probably the sentence that it's in. So starting on line right here, line 12. Then, after much consideration, Pope Alexander III in 1163 forbade the clergy from acting as surgeons. Now, there may be some words in here you don't know, but forbade means disallow, so make you not allowed. And clergy means monks or priests or anyone who leads in a religious environment. Now, to get this, what I usually do is I pretend that word consideration isn't even there. So I kind of delete it from the sentence in my head. And I say, what would go there if I was filling in that blank? So then, after much blank, he forbade them from acting as surgeons. So what did he do for a long time before he made them disallowed? I would say probably something like after a lot of thought, right? Because the Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church, so he's someone who has to make decisions about things. And when you make a big decision, usually you think a lot beforehand. So I would say thought would be the first thing that pops into my mind there. So look at the choices. You've got compassion, which is one meaning of the word consideration, but I don't think it goes here because it doesn't seem like Pope Alexander III is caring for people or not caring for people. It's just not discussing that. So what about money? Consideration can mean money in certain situations, but does it here? Then after much money, he blah blah blah. No, I don't think so. That's kind of silly. Now, what about C, neglect? Now, neglect means not paying attention. So then, after much neglect, Pope Alexander III in 1163 forbade the clergy from acting as surgeons. It doesn't ever say in the passage that he's not paying attention to them, so you can probably get rid of that too. That leaves us to D, which is the exact prediction that we came up with earlier, thought. So you'd check that and you'd get it right. Now, If you go down to question 7 right here, I want to talk about this one because I like to talk about. Now, go down to question 7. We can guess that Barber's poles were colored red and white mainly because blah blah blah, right? So change it to a question, like I always say. So this would be something like, why were barber poles colored red and white? Now, we need to go to the right paragraph, so that's a little after this. So right there. Okay, so let's see. We want to read so we can figure out why they were colored red and white. Today, swirling red and white striped poles hang outside barber storefronts. These poles originated during the Middle Ages. Back then, bleeding was a frequent occurrence. Most men and some women would go every year to be bled. Does it talk about the pole? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, look. The barber kept bandages around this pole and used them to tie the arm of the patient. So, it seems like the pole had bandages on it, and maybe bandages were maybe bloody from all of the surgery that was going on at the barber shop. So you're probably looking for something that says the pole has bloody bandages on it, right? That would be my answer. So go to the choices. Now, A says a law required them to be those colors. Now, you've got to be careful because the paragraph does say that there's a law dealing with barber poles, but look at what it says. It says, according to this law, surgeons' poles would have a picture of a red rag on them. Barbers' poles, on the other hand, would be striped blue and white. So the question says, why are they colored red and white? So the law said that they had to be blue and white, and that happened later anyway. So we can say that A is definitely not right. What about B? Barbers wanted to show that they were different from surgeons who used blue and white poles. Now, the whole article is about how surgeons and barbers were the same. But there is something at the end of that paragraph, like I just said, where they made a law, right? And so the law was that surgeons had to have poles with a picture of a red rag, right here, and barbers had to have striped blue and white poles. Now, the question choice, or the answer choice, says surgeons who use blue and white poles, but the article says that barbers had blue and white poles, so we know that B is wrong too. What about C? In the Middle Ages, the color red represented good health. I don't think that's in the passage. It's not. Do you see it here anywhere? No. So what you would do with that is say, no, wrong. If there's an answer choice that's right, it's going to be in the passage or it's going to be something that you can guess from the passage. And nothing implies that in the passage. Now the last one, the poles were covered with bloody bandages. Why, that's exactly what we said we were looking for. So you would choose D, you would get it right, and you'd be in good shape. Now, you can read the entire tutorial there, telling why the right answers are right and the wrong answers are wrong. And I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. This is Neil, and have a good night.